Events that made history in 2022. From the moment that the inaugural class of 2022 was born, it's been a year of major history-making moments. We thought we'd take a look back at some of the biggest events that made history in 2022. We saw the first manned mission to Mars, the rise of the first artificial intelligence, and the downfall of Russia's Putin-led government. But what else happened in 2022? Stay tuned and find out. We're fascinated by history, and we know you are too. That's why we created History Bolt, to bring the past to life in an exciting new way. History Bolt is a YouTube channel that produces videos about anything and everything historical. Before we dive into today's video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. Also tap on the bell icon to turn on notifications for our channel. This way you will be notified when next we upload a video like this one. Without further ado, let's dive right into the video. In 2022, we saw our first successful transplant of a human head onto a new body, and Russia and China declared war on the United States. But what else happened? Let's take a closer look at some of the major events that took place in 2022. Number 1. Russia and China declared war on the United States. You're probably familiar with the story of how Russia and China declared war on the United States. It was big news for a few months, but it quickly became old news as the conflict escalated into what some have called World War III. The conflict began when Russia and China decided to join forces to defend North Korea from American aggression. The US had launched an attack on North Korea after Kim Jong-un threatened to retaliate against an American strike in Syria by attacking Japan or Guam unless he received $200 billion, which would have been bad for business in Washington, D.C., so they ordered another airstrike on his country, this time with nuclear weapons. Well, you can imagine how much Kim loved that idea. He was ready for battle as soon as he heard about it. But Russia and China weren't going down without a fight either. They were all too happy to go along with their friend's plan because they wanted revenge against America too. Number 2. Inflation surges around the world. The negative effect of the COVID-19 pandemic extended to 2022 with global inflation that came as no shock to economic analysts and world leaders. Price increased in the US at more than 9.1% in June and 11.1% in the UK in October. The cause of this inflation is majorly said to be driven by food and energy cost at the early phase of the pandemic. Subsequently, inflation has worsened as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war. The Food and Agricultural Organization (FAO) an increase of 12.6% between February and March to reach the highest level since its inception in 1990. The FAO Cereal Price Index has risen greatly to 17.9%, which over time reflected in the wheat and coarse grains, largely due to disruptions from one of the world's largest wheat exporters. Oil prices have also skyrocketed due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, soaring over $110 per barrel as many Western countries imposed crippling sanctions on Russia in retaliation. Number 3. Russia invades Ukraine. The Russian-Ukraine war has recorded tens of thousands the death of people from both countries. This has become the largest refugee crisis to ever happen in Europe since World War II. With over 8 million people being displaced within Ukraine and over 7.8 million people fleeing out of the invasion began on the morning of February 24, 2022, minutes after Putin's announced a special military operation for the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. Russia mounted pressure on Ukraine and Russia captured Kherson in March and then Mariupol in May after a siege. On 18 April, Russia launched a renewed attack on the Donbas region. Russian forces continued to bomb both military and civilian targets far from the front line, including electrical and water systems. Ukraine initiated a counteroffensive from the south in August and in the northeast in September. In November, Ukraine recovered Kherson. The invasion has been heavily criticized by the international community. The United Nations General Assembly condemned Russia's actions and demanded that Russia withdraws all its forces. Number 4. U.S. Supreme Court overturns abortion rights. The United States Apex Court in June brought the curtains down that signaled the end of abortion rights in the country. The court, in a 6-3 ruling powered by its conservative majority, upheld a Republican-backed Mississippi law that bans abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. The vote was 5-4 to overturn Roe, with conservative Chief Justice John Roberts writing separately to say he would have upheld the Mississippi law without taking the additional step of erasing the Roe precedent altogether. There were several protests around the country regarding the ruling of the court. Some women claimed that the decision of the court was harsh and that instead of the court focusing on making other laws on other pressing societal issues like controlling the use of guns, the government is focused on controlling women. Number 5. Flooding in Pakistan. 4 of the country's province was affected with approximately 15% of its population. Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif stated that he had never seen an example of a more devastating example of the effect of global warming. He also said despite contributing less than 1% to global greenhouse gas emissions that have been adversely affected by climate change. The flood, which started in June, is said to be worse than that of 2010 when 1,700 people were dead. At that time, the United Nations Secretary General said it was the worst disaster he had ever witnessed. This flood leads to an economic loss worth over $15.2 billion and damage worth $14.9 billion. Experts have said that the immediate causes of the flood were heavier than the usual monsoon rains and melting glaciers. Number 6. Queen Elizabeth passes away. Queen Elizabeth L. died after 7 decades of occupying the United Kingdom's throne and being the longest monarch to wear the crown. The Queen died at Balmoral Castle, her estate in the Scottish Highlands, in the afternoon at 1510 BST on September 8, 2022. According to the death certificate released by the National Records of Scotland, it identified the cause of her death was old age. Her successor will be her son, Prince Charles III. He was not crowned immediately because mourning traditions continued. The coronation of Prince Charles as King of the United Kingdom will take place on May 6, 2023. Number 7. The world population exceeds 8 billion. On November 15, 2022, the Earth surpassed 8 billion people as projected by the United Nations. The world's population is expected to grow to around 8.5 billion in 2030 and 9.7 billion in 2050. It is projected to reach a peak of around 10.4 billion people during the 2080s and to remain at that level until 2100. Experts have said that half of the world's population will be concentrated in 4 of these countries: China, India, the United States, and Indonesia. Scientists announced that they had discovered life on Mars, but it was just algae growing out of control. Scientists announced that they had discovered life on Mars, but it was just algae growing out of control. This is not the first time that scientists have made this mistake either. In 2019, researchers at NASA announced that they had found signs of life on Mars, only to realize that the signals were caused by a missing cable in their equipment. In 2012 and 2015, 2 separate teams from different parts of the world came forward with evidence of extraterrestrial life on our neighboring planet before realizing it was just them mistaking themselves for aliens. The difference between these instances and 2022 is that now we know exactly how long ago Earth's bacteria migrated into space, about 1 billion years ago. The most exciting aspect about this discovery isn't necessarily its scientific validity, it's the fact that bacteria have been living off Earth all along without us knowing it until now. So, share with us any other 2022 historical moment you feel we left out in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification. See you in our next video. Bye for now.